It's Professor 095 back here. This time round, upon popular demand, popular request, a lot of people have been asking me like, how do I feel about Drajeweled Magnus and the support for set 10. I guess there is no better time for me to to say that like how do I feel about this support in general, how do I feel about Magnus in general. And of course, to be honest, this video is quite a tad bit overdue because actually this topic has been on the back of my head ever since Drajeweled Magnus came out. And for the subsequent weeks after that, we have tested. I think I've come to a pretty solid conclusion on my end. It might not be a very I would say that it's not going to be a conclusion that everybody's gonna like, but I'm just gonna put my thoughts out there how I feel about Drajeweled Magnus as a whole. So before we dive straight into it, if you do enjoy this video, if you do enjoy the content that I'm making in this channel, please consider to hit like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. Other than that, before we jump in, here's the word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by MyMetalCards at Etsy.com, which they are a shop that specializes in creating, hence the name, metal cards, right? So they have plenty of variety of designs, cool, awesome designs that you can choose from, ranging not only from Cardfight Vanguard, but also from other games such as MTG, Flesh and Blood, and also Gundam, if I'm not mistaken at this point. So plenty of choices. And for example, on my end, I have the Gear Chronicle clan emblem right here, and I also have the black and white Chronojet energy counter, which is metallic, which is hard, and also quite sharp as well. So which is cool. And the best part about it is that it's not only limited to only like this kind of cards, but they also have like crest, power counters, energy generators, and so forth, right? So plenty of things that you can choose from. There's even transparent acrylic ones if you wanted to. And also, you can use my promo code at checkout by using the promo code ENOCHSAYS, so ENOCHSAYS. You will get $5 off on your first purchase. And also, just to keep in mind that these metal cards are not official, but they are great for casual use. You can do it as some sort of like a deck divider, or you can use it for personal collection as well. That would be nice in this way. So that's about it. Use my promo code and check out the store as well. That is MyMetalCards at Etsy.com. Link in the description. And that's about it. We move on to the video. So you do recall a few months ago I made this video about how to cook Drajeweled in 2024. At the time, that was the time during when Michiru Master Deck Set was released with Ignis, with Frapula, and also like Rokaku, etc. Right? So also like there's the new Regalis piece as well as another Sanctitude actually. So for people who really wanted to jump into Drajeweled as well, and also it's a good starter set, generally speaking, for people to get into Vanguard, as a starter product. Nonetheless, it's kind of nice at the time because like there's some sort of like a reprint, even though like to be fair, nobody plays Rock Aggro anymore on hindsight. And also this is also concurrent with the fact that like on, I think it was around like set 8 if I'm not mistaken at the time during April, where we have like Little Sago coming out. So at the back of my head, there are a few thoughts running at the back of my head at the time, because number one, I was thinking to myself, maybe Drajeweled does not need to have another new form for the rest of the year. The best that they can do, what Bushiroad can do was that they will give him like say some triple rare support or something along those lines, right? And of course we did. In set 8 we actually have Litor Sagor, as a matter of fact, and after that, not up to say 2 or 3 months ago at this point. Yes, I would say like 2 months ago. So little did I know, and I spoke too soon. Okay, I said to myself, Drajeweled is not gonna get a new form, right? Lo and behold, to my absolute joy and horror, ladies and gentlemen, Drajeweled Magnus. Because believe me, this thing was not on my bingo card in 2025. I never see that coming, didn't I? Then again, I don't know how I feel about Drajeweled Magnus back then, because like at the time it was pretty cool, it was pretty nice. I was screaming on the top of my head, yeah, let's go Magnus, right? Yeah, I'm Magnus Carlsen. Okay, anyways, I make that joke all the time. Okay, anyways, the matter of fact was that like Drajeweled getting a new form was something that we did not expect. I did not expect as well. And of course, bearing in mind that Drajeweled Magnus was released about like I think about like close to 3 weeks now at this point. I would say 2 or 3 weeks. And when we are looking at the meta so far, I would say that like there are some viability in terms of its meta gameplay. But to be honest, I felt like it will be a little bit of a tad bit of an improvement, of course. But before we, jump into like how do I build my Drajeweled Magnus, I guess maybe I should just go to the skills first. For not only for Magnus but also like the support like Geod Draw and also the right line. So before we jump straight into it, I would like to say that of course. Bearing in mind, there are a lot of possibilities that you can go with Magnus, as well as like a lot of like other different generics that you can play around and other key pieces that you can play around. So of course, do not take this video as like a conclusive evidence of like how like you have to build Drajeweled like this. I think for everyone and everywhere, like your preferences might differ. So just experiment as much as you want. I personally have settled down into one particular build, and we're gonna jump straight into it later. But yes, we'll talk about Drajeweled Magnus and also the right line and also like Geod Draw. So Drajeweled gets a new right line. Okay, so it's so first off we have Drajeweled Draco Kick Glow Up. Okay. Pun intended, okay, actually. The right line actually get a glow up. Okay, so Jeweller's Draco Kick Glow is just basically your generic starter. It's just like right second draw one. That's it. That's particularly it. And then we have Jewel Core Dragon Glint. Okay, so Glint or Jewel Core Glint 2.0 is very vastly different from like the old Jewel Core, bearing as a matter of fact was that like he doesn't call himself out when he's being rolled over. Rather, when he is rolled upon by the new Jewel Luster, he just basically helps you to look top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 2 different grades from among them, and shove it into your soul, and then you shuffle your deck, which is kind of nice, right? So it's something like better Vacant Funk, albeit Holoraptor Vacant Funk, a bit that you don't really get to draw, but that is fine because essentially means that you get to have like early game filter in a sense, so that's kind of good. And you can shove in your Ignis or your like other Drajewel or like something that is like a grade 3, right? You need to have like at least to shove in a grade 3. Then by the time you roll into Magnus, you have all of your souls, like your all grades in your souls to be complete. So that it will be that is nice actually. After that, we have Demonic Stone Dragon Jewel Luster. So Luster is when this unit is rolled upon by a Drajeweled card name, you soul charge 1. If your soul has a Jewel Core Glint, you get to draw 1, which is not that much different from the old Jewel Neil. But the biggest difference about this Jewel Neil is that he doesn't have an on-hit effect, because the second skill is that basically continuous Vanguard during your turn. If your Vanguard is Magnus, Drajeweled Magnus this unit plus 5k. So notice how this deck, notice how this card doesn't have the on-hit effect. So you still get to draw the usual soul charge 1 and draw 1 if you have like different grades. But this time around, if you have Jewel Core into your soul, you get to draw 1, which is a guaranteed draw. So that's why you're not supposed to play like Soul Blast cyclers like Ravos and Lemina. So yes, that's definitely a bad idea. But yes, that's kind of nice.
But of course, the main highlight of this particular deck is supposed to be Drajeweled Magnus. Okay, Mahoryu Drajeweled Magnus. Okay, so Auto Vanguard Circle at the beginning of your right phase, you choose 2 cards from your drop and you move it into your soul. Auto Vanguard second skill is the Auto Vanguard skill at the beginning of your battle phase. If your soul has a Drajeweled in its card name, all your front row units plus 5k until end of turn. And Auto Vanguard Circle, when this unit attacks the Vanguard, you soul blast 4 with different grades as usual. So that's Drajeweled Schemic. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguard until end of turn. The power becomes 0, and if your opponent is grade 3 or greater, and this unit gets crit +1, and if this effect increases the critical and your damage zone has 4 or more cards, or if your persona wrote during this turn, you choose one demonic Geod Dragon, which of course there's not really much options with for this in regard in its card name, and it gets auto regard once per turn. When this unit attack, you discard 1 card from your hand. This unit drives becomes 1 and perform drive checks until the end of the battle. Alright, so essentially speaking, what this new Magnus does is kind of a little bit like Magnus, not like Magnus, like Ignis in a sense, bearing in mind that like the beginning of your battle phase, or you can able to shove like cards from your drop zone into your soul, preferably like different grades, and move it into your soul. This time round, Magnus just takes the beginning of your battle phase and change it into the beginning of right phase, which is good, which means that you can guarantee yourself some sort of like a different grades into your soul by then. And of course, there is a lot of builds right now that like incorporated Ignis into this kind of like build, so which means that you don't have to be very scared of like discarding your Drajeweleds. And then you can just find some ways to shove it into your soul later afterwards, right? So it could be by the use of Noctile Joe or something along those lines, right? One of the biggest advantages so far I felt like with Drajeweled Magnus is that it doesn't matter if you go first or go second, but preferably you have to go first. Is that as compared to the previous Drajeweld, you just basically just reduce your opponent's Vanguard power into 0, not 1. Okay, so which is huge in a sense that like it kind of like screams an extra 5k in some cases of like magic numbers, so you really cannot rely on that one handguard or something along those lines. Like, so it's kind of good, but of course the pressure would be much more better if you went second, considering how you get a crit as well. That is also on another caveat, was that you need to either have 4 damage or you have persona right during this turn. You did persona right during this turn, and basically essentially you just give one of your demonic Geod Dragons to gain drive checks. So in this case there's really not much demonic Geod Dragons like Mahoryu. Being here that you have your choices, your 3 limited choices is either you have like Ristogeller, Magnus himself, which he is also a demonic Geod Dragon, or you're going to go with Geod Draw, which of course I'm gonna talk about Geod Draw later. But this is nice because at the end of the day, Magnus just opens a whole new cooking avenue. Say like open up the possibilities of having like either you want to go for like 4 attacks, 4 drive checks, or if you want to mix with the Magnus engine, you can possibly do 4 attacks with 5 drive checks. Is it like if you want to mix with Ignis, yes, you probably, well, you still won't do a lot of drive checks, but like you won't do like 5 drive checks, but at the very least you get to have 4 drive checks and 5 attacks. That is if you mix in Vapula, or you're going to mix with Emposa. So the possibilities are there. But of course, it all depends on like how do you want to make use of your space, because of course if you're going to dump in the Ignis engine, you're gonna have to make room for like a lot of those grade 4 support cards like Noctaujo, Vapula, and of course Magnus, not Magnus, like Ignis as well. But that aside, I'm gonna go through with what Geod Draw does actually. So what Geod Draw does is that when this unit is placed on Guardian Circle, auto, this is the auto skill. Choose grade 3 with Jojo in its card name for your right deck, and you may reveal it. If you reveal the card, or you have a Grade 3 Greater Drajeweled in his card name, this unit gets shield plus 5k. And then the second skill continuous, if you have a Grade 3 Greater Drajeweled, it gets all of the following abilities. Also, when this unit is placed on rearguard circle during your main phase, you may soul charge 1. And then after that, the cost, you Energy Blast 3, you choose a Grade 3 card or less card from your soul with a different card name and call it your rearguard circle. And the second skill is that auto rearguard circle once per turn. When this unit attacks a Grade 3 or greater unit, if your damage zone has 4 or more cards, this unit becomes becomes 2 until the end of the battle, which is kind of nice because essentially, if you're not playing Noctelgeo or if you're not playing Zagan, which of course both of them are very heavily great for engine, then Geod Draw is close enough, albeit in a sense I would say that like he is a Grade 3, he gets a 5k shield, that is nice, but I will still, at the end of the day, I will still have to in comparison, like I would say Noctelgeo is still a better option in this case, like because it's a 15k shield, and not to mention that the second skill, which of course requires you to EV3 and call something out, is not very different from Zagan, but technically as a matter of fact that you need to use a lot of Energy Blast as well. So of course it's kind of bit EB heavy if you're playing Beto Saga into it. Not to mention that if you're playing like Tishkal into it, then of course Energy Blast is going to be very heavy. So it all depends like how do you want to build this deck, and like gearing towards is it better for this deck to go first or go second, right? So the possibilities are there. But now that we have established the skills of Drajeweled Magnus and the recent support, I would say that in one sense I have a little bit of a mixed bag per se, right? So number one, it's good because the right line is kind of nice because you get to filter early game filter and just allows you to just shove in like your grade 3s or grade 4s, which is pretty scarce in the deck already. So if you manage to shove it in, that would be nice. That's the the good glow up of the deck. Okay, I will still use this joke, guys. Okay, that Magnus, I would say, is a little bit I would say that it's not too much of a game changing, given that as a matter of fact, like after we like 2-3 weeks into the set, we still don't see a lot of like Drajeweled topping. But I'm not saying that Drajeweled Magnus is bad. If anything, I would say it doesn't really rely too much on the fact that it's better in comparison to like Counter Blast 1 and Soul Charge 2 different grades. No, like Soul Charge 2 and hoping that you get 2 different grades and you get to draw 1. Yes, of course, granted that Magnus doesn't really guarantee you like a draw engine in a sense, but indirectly it also kind of is, because like if you're able to give one of your rear guards to drive check, that means that you can actually like +2 in a sense. But it was still like a net +1 because you have to discard a card in order for you to drive check 2 with Geod Draw, which of course Geod Draw is kind of good, but I felt like, in my own personal opinion, it still be a little bit lackluster because it still need to have like a lot of like requirements for you to go through that drive +2, right? Because the thing is that Geod Draw doesn't really have the caveat of like Persona Road during this turn, whereas Drajeweled Magnus does. But the only thing that is common between those two cards is that you need to have 4 or more damage. So which means that Drajeweled does need to tank a lot of early game damage if you so choose, if you want to finish the game early. So this is technically not a very good gameplay for me. That's why I prefer, if you can manage, I prefer like I would able to control my damage into a minimum. So maybe like control my damage around like 2 or 3, that would be nice. Like reasonably it will be 3, because that's like at the mid game it will be good, but I felt like Drajeweled Magnus will be better in late game, right? Because that's possibly like your finishers with Geod Draw and whatnot. Then again, let's bring up like 3 possibilities that I can I'm thinking on the top of my head for you guys to like play this deck, right? So there are three possibilities for you to build this deck. Number one, you can go with the pure Magnus build, which means that you're going to kick out all of your Grade 4 engines. You're not gonna play Teldraws, you're not gonna play Zagans, you're not gonna play Vapula, right? If you want your 5th attackers, at this point you will have to play Emposa, which is more, I would say like your 5th attacker, but you don't have really much power. But then that I digress, that's not the point, because you want to do 5 attacks as much as possible. You have to be incredibly reliant on your generics. That's first. For Magnus, right? So for pure Magnus, which means that you have to play your Biflons, you have to play your 4 colors, you have to play like your dual nations like Fort and Royalties, something along those lines. Number 2, you can go with the hybrid Ignis Magnus build, which means that you will still keep the pieces of like your Grade 4 and Grade 3 combined together. But my biggest problem so far with what I tested with this deck personally with the hybrid build is several layers to this. Number 1, you're flooding your hand with like not much shields potentially, because like if you're play 4 Ignis and like 3 Magnus in the deck, that's like 7 cards in your deck that doesn't have 5k shields, no shield values whatsoever. So it's going to be very bricky, but the thing is that you don't have to be very but the biggest pros I find it so far is that you don't have to worry about what to discard, right? Because if you manage to draw into your Magnus or you draw into your Ignis, that's basically your discard folders, which means that if you're able to find a way to like shelve those cards into your drop zone, which you usually do, that means that you will still guarantee yourself like a front row 5k, and I think that's pretty good enough. Not to mention that there is also this potentially chance is that like if you're not able to persona, you're still able to be rely on Magnus to like Ignis to do the job. But then again, I see a lot of like people trying to cope is that like, oh, can you do 5 drive checks and 5 attacks? I don't think that's actually viable. If anything, I would say like what I've mentioned earlier is that we at most we can just do 4 drive checks and 4 attacks at the best. I don't see a scenario where we can do 5 drive checks and 5 attacks. I don't think that's possible in a sense, because if you already triple drive with Ignis, there's no way that Geod Draw is able to drive check. So yes. Yeah, it's only like you need Magnus skill to be able to have Geod Draw to do a drive check, right? So that I don't think that's possible. That's one for sure. But notice in mind that you just have to bear in mind that to notice that like the Ignis Magnus build requires you to also play some Grade 4 engines, which is of course you need to have Vapula. Maybe like around like 2 or 3 copies of Noctile Drill just in case, because of your 15k shields and whatsoever, right? And then the rest of the build is not too much generic reliant in this case. And then after that, the last build will be pure Ignis with Magnus right line, which means that I will play Magnus in the right deck, and then after that for the rest of the deck I will play the Ignis engine. There is no Geod Draws, nothing whatsoever, no Magnus, no Geod Draws, nothing whatsoever. And I find myself to like this build the most, right? The pure Ignis build with the Magnus right line. Not only because I don't have to rely so much on my personas, but the power that is like your power to persona, right, is almost the same or like equivalent for you to write into Ignis and then beginning of your battle phase and your front row plus 15k. So that's not really much of a difference, right? But in a sense, at the same time, I still don't have to rely too much on my generics. Bearing in mind that generics that I usually play is basically like Tishkal or 4 color and maybe dual nations if I have the space for it. But generally, I think I find myself got sufficient space because there's a Zagan as well. So that's how I usually build it. Unless there's also like a very hee ha ha build that I see a lot of people do, is that they will mix all 3 together. Or okay, the final honorable mention or dishonorable mention, no matter how you feel about it, is that you have the Magnus red line And then for the rest of the deck, you play the Ignis engine plus the Mask engine. Now, I have no idea if any one of you is ballsy enough to do that, because not only that, the Mask engine is already pretty much filling up your space with like Drajeweled Mask and also Mask of Hidragrams, and not to mention if you have Skull Kenda, that is like a lot of great trees in the deck. That is going to be like a lot of things that can possibly go wrong. I'm not gonna comment too much on it, but if you really want to go for it, depending on your circumstances, depending on how the situation goes, it can either work on your benefit or it will not. So pick your battles wisely. So pick and choose what works best for you. But of course, I would definitely, at the end of the day, for my own personal build, I will go with this pure Ignis build, right? So let me show you. So to actually make you understand what I'm trying to talk about, right? So I have 3 lists here based on the ones that I've mentioned earlier, like the pure Magnus, hybrid Magnus, Ignis, as well as pure Ignis, but with the Drajeweled right line. Okay, so the first thing here, if you look at this, the first one, I know it's not the best, but okay, feel free to tweak the ratios into whatever you want. So this is just based on my justifications and like how do I want to like pure, like if I were to be that one Drajeweled player who wants to cook up different things, right? So the first thing here will be like a pure Magnus build. Of course, notice that you have to max out your Geod Draws, you have to max out your Magnus. Ace unit is going to be guaranteed in all of your Drajeweled builds. That because the filtering top 7 shove 1 to soul is kind of nice, because not only you get to shove 1 extra grade, different grade, but you also be able to like call something out from your soul, of course, which in this case you might want to call out your 4 colors, you might call out your Twin Marvel or something along those lines, right? If you want your restanders, I think like the best you can do is, of course, you can have Lithosagur, and notice how I play like Fort and Revoltis in this build, just because like in my own case personally, that Drajeweled can push for early game. Because like the most common conception, the most common, I would say like complaint that I heard from a lot of people is that Drajeweled doesn't really get to do anything like from past turn 3 onwards, right? So like grade 1, grade 2, you just be there. You only your Vanguard swings and nothing else. But maybe I offer you maybe some sort of like alternative along those lines, right? So maybe you can just play Fort in Revoltis, not only for you to just soul charge 1 as well, and you can just essentially just use the counterblast to just counterblast 1 and call something out from your soul, but you just have to be very mindful not to call out Jewel Core or something like that, because if you call out Jewel Core, then when you write Drajeweled Magnus, then Jewel New can't prop to draw 1 soul charge and draw 1 because he's not on the board. So maybe like you just call it, or maybe call like Twin Marvel, or call Compositive Freaks, or like call like a 4 color just in case. That is okay, but if you really do want to emphasize on like the restanding engines and something along those lines, right? So if you really don't want to go for the early game mechanic or like the early game push, you can always change this into Emposa or Rock Augur. But bear in mind that because the counterblast is slightly heavy, I'm not saying this like like super heavy, but like you already have like a Lithosagur that counterblast 1 to restand. So does Rock Augur. So if you wanted to use all of your counterblasts in that one particular regard into, say, Lithosagur and Rock Augur, then feel free to go ahead. Otherwise, if you want to have a free restander, then of course you can use Emposa as some sort of like a backup on those lines, right? So if you can see like why I play Compositive Freaks is because not only is like some sort of a shield value, I think it's like around like 10k shield, something along those lines, but not to mention that if this card's in the drop, then he is able to like bind himself and then just choose 1 grade 3 or grade 2 card and move into your soul, thereby like triggering to the fact that like if you have discarded a Drajeweled early game, you can just use it and shove it into your soul, then beginning with your battle phase. If you have Drajeweled in your soul, then from your unit plus 5k, so which is nice. And the reason why I play Twin Marvel, It's because like you Soul Blast 4 all the time, and then you get to look at the top card of your deck. You can either put on the Soul or you put it on the top, which is kind of like synergies or kind of like combo with Geod Draw in as a matter of fact. In the sense that like if you know what you're gonna drive check into, and if you know what you can like Magnus, like especially like there's if you know what you can drive check with Magnus, then I feel like you can just keep on like somewhat of a minor filtering in a sense. I can understand not much people would like to play Twin Marvel because you're just only able to check one time if you Soul Blast 4 at the same time, right? So that doesn't mean that Geod Draw will know like what you're gonna drive check into. Only Magnus is able to. So I can understand why a lot of people will not play Twin Marvel, but of course if you don't want that, you can always play Biflons. As much as I hate to admit it, okay, if you really want to play Bliffons, just play Bliffons. I still stand by the fact that I do not like to play Bliffons in Drajeweled, okay, because it's so high-end RNG. If you don't get the cards that you want, it's just basically a waste of your counterblast, right? So please don't do that. I mean, like, if you really want to gamble a lot with Bliffons, I will suggest you just go ahead and play this, right? Of course, 4 colors just because Little Sago and Geod Draw already Energy Blast 3, so just just Energy Blast 3. So end of battle, if she boosted, then retires herself and get to draw one, which is kind of nice, right? So that's my pure Magnus build. But of course, I understand that this build is going to get a lot of flack because it's not a very ideal. This is not the most ideal Magnus. It could be better, but I feel like this is my personal like the best Ignis build I can go with. Not like pure Magnus build I can go with, right? So it's all depends on your ratios. It all depends on like what you want to do, early game and late game. Of course, the next build I'm going to show you right now is going to be the hybrid Ignis Magnus build. Of course, I'm gonna play 4 Magnus, 3 Geod Draws, and 4 Noctowl Draws and 3 Magnus. And I play Forbido Surrogate, so if you look at the previous build, you notice that I play Twin Cast because I don't play like Grade 4, so that's why I don't play Forbido, but this time I do play Forbido just because I want to dish out the Grade 4s and also like call out 2 different Grade 3s, being that you have Noctowl Draw and also Geod Draw, which is kind of nice. You can fill your like board with those 2 Grade 3s in a sense, which is kind of nice, not only because like you'll see you can make use of Rapilla for your fifth attack. You don't have to rely on Emposa, and you're still able to get to draw one at the end of the day, right? Because of Rapilla. So of course, you can actually tweak the ratios. If you don't like to play like 4 Ignis, you can just cut 3 to 3 Ignis, and maybe like you can play 4 Rapillas as a matter of fact. And of course, bearing in mind that because I'm playing possibly at the end of the day, if you are not able to persona, then of course Ignis is just my backup, which means of course in terms if you wrote into Ignis, then you will not be able to write into Magnus again. Just bear that in mind, and you will still have to go revert back into the pure Ignis engine, which you have to do 3 drives and 5 attacks at most, right? So yes, so that's about it. Like you can basically kick out Fort and Rivaltis if you want to like go for like Rock Agro or something along those lines. But then again, if you want to play with Rock Agro, then I felt like the CB is gonna be a tad bit more extra because you do have to use like a lot of like early standards with the powers and whatnot. I think like usually it's just because like Rock Agro is because it's still the same thing as Little Saga. You still get the plus 10k or something along those lines, right? If you have 4 different grades. But of course, if you have Fort and Rivaltis, that means that I just can go for the early game push. I think I can still Soul Charge one and just Counter Blast one, call something out from the Soul Eater afterwards, right? You can at least fill your board in one sense. Late game, it kind of also work late game as well, because if you Counter Blast one, you call out Geod Draw. And I'm pretty sure that Geod Draw doesn't, from what I've mentioned earlier, that Geod Draw doesn't need to be called from hand as well, as long as this unit is placed on the rearguard circle. During the main phase, right? So I mean, this still in a sense it still does work. So just call for a relative late game, so charge 1 counter +1, call out your Geod Draws, and then use Geod Draw during your main phase, and then just EV3, choose 1 card from your soul and call it. So basically, it's like board filling in a sense, right? So it's still a very good synergy and good combo in that particular regard. So I guess we can just go with whatever it is. And of course, I will play like blue OT. I'll never play the Dark States OT. And the most common thing with all of my 3 builds is that I all play draw triggers, because you need to have like your key pieces on time. Even though like your front triggers can give you the technically better shield value with 20k, I will still prefer draw triggers, because I need to draw into like say Ignis in Noctalgio, or something like Little Sago or something along those lines. Right? So your key pieces is actually very important. So I just go with like draw triggers and not bother with it, right? So this is my hybrid Magnus build, but of course, like I've mentioned earlier, the Magnus is hybrid. So I've mentioned earlier, like there's not really much shield value if you're going to play it this way, because like the only thing that like if you want to play like 7 cards with no shield value is that you have to be very like extra careful with how you guard. Other than that, if you can just cut down 1 Ignis and then just play another 5k shield like Vapula or something along those lines, that'd be nice. Or unless you want to play like 4 Geod Draws, that is up to you. So that's about it. But last but not least, this is my own personal build. Okay, this is also like reflects my real life, like in real life deck profile as well. So this call this my some sort of like a offshoot Mimi deck profile in a sense, is that I play the Magnus Red Line with the pure Ignis engine. Number one, I don't really have to bother with like not having persona rights, right? Because the biggest concern with me testing with this previous builds, with all of the hybrid builds or with the pure Magnus build, is that almost at every single point in my game, I have to be making sure that I have a Drajeweled Magnus in my hand to able for me to persona right. If I don't manage to persona right, then I don't really get to have like the full power. I don't get to utilize the full power of Magnus. You get what I'm saying. Like, I don't get to utilize the full power of Magnus. The power is just going to be very slow, and all the numbers can be technically guardable if you're going to do like multi attacks, right? Because most likely what people will do is that they will guard the early attacks, and then they will take the last few attacks because their power is 0. So there's no incentive for you to guard harder than before, right? But with this particular Ignis build, like the pure Ignis build with the Magnus rank line, essentially what I'm gonna do with myself was that I am just going to go with like 4 Ignis, because I can secure myself. It's just going to pop up in my hand all the time. I just write on it, and I don't have to care so much about whether or not do I persona right or do I not persona right, right? 4 Nostalgia, self-explanatory, 1 Forbidor, 1 Ace unit, 4 little Sarkos and 2 Tishkals, because I don't really use too much of an energy. So I think like this is kind of nice, because I can just use the energy blast for like guarding or something along those lines. So I think that's nice. I will have Zagans, because it's the same thing what Geod Draw does. You can just fill your board with like your rear guards. You don't really have to commit so much from your hand. Means that you can just call out your Vapulas, your Little Sagos, or like your 7 Falcratias, which I play 2 of them, because I can just shove the grade 3 or grade 4 and still plus 20k plus 15k at the end of the turn. She's able to shove herself into the soul and get to draw 1, which is also kind of nice, because it's also technically a draw engine. I play 3 Focalos just because I can just tire herself and draw 1, providing if I energy blast during this turn, Vapula, and of course Blue OT and something along those lines. Now, I felt this build in my own personal case, it might not be for you. This might be the most consistent Drajeweled build I have ever tested so far. Not to say that the previous build is bad, but you need to have like a lot of things in your mind. You need to have a lot of things in your consideration, or whether or not what cards to discard, what cards do you not need, what cards do you want to call out. I mean, all things is definitely good. It can definitely put into advantage if you know how to pilot this deck in general, like in full. But as for now, I felt like this would be the more consistent one because like you don't really have to rely so much on generic pieces. Notice how this deck doesn't really rely too much on generics. Unlike like the previous few builds where you need to have like the dual nations, you need to have like twin marvel, you need to have well twin marvel is pretty cheap, right? But then again, like if you have like 4 colors or something along those lines, or Biflons per se, then I would felt like I don't really wanted to have flood my deck with like a lot of generics, thereby like giving like dishing out more money to build essentially what is not I will say this Drajeweled is not super viable. At best I'll give him at low B, in the lower rung, at probably at the top rungs of like the B, around the like the B tier, right? So he can be A tier sometimes, but he's technically in the low A, or he's like top B along those lines, right? So he's like around like tier 1.5 or tier low 1. I don't see a lot of Drajeweled tops, but then again, it's because like my own personal bias, and possibly like because I've seen a lot of decks in this meta nowadays. It's like super scary as well. Not to mention that if you're fighting against control decks, if you're fighting against decks like Hard Lulu, you have like a lot of problems with it. Just on my own personal case, okay. Yeah, Magnus leaves a lot to be desired. I'm not to say that like it's super bad, but I felt like this whole support is not lackluster. It's just not enough. And I just have to say that like in moving on in the near future, they might possibly give out support that probably might need to buff up Magnus better, in a sense. So I'm not saying that the existing card pools doesn't get to push Magnus into greater heights, but I have a feeling that like at this point in the game, I felt like Magnus is a tad bit lackluster. It can compete viably in the competitive scene in a sense, but not to like super greater heights, right? It's not really Hard Lulu level, it's not Baba Sakura level. But at the end of the day, I find this deck to be pretty menacing and pretty scary to play. Scary to play against, very fun to play against, provided if you don't break. I think that's the biggest problem also. Like if you don't break, if all of your cards just come right on time, then everything will go well with you, right? So of course, bearing that in mind, you can just pause the video, rewind the video, just refer to my deck list, like this pictures that I've referred to you. If you really wanted to like consider like how playing Drajeweled, you can just take some of my deck list, test it on CFA, print it out, do whatever you want with it, and just go with whatever that suits you the best. I'm not going to be the one here telling you, or like say like, oh, this is the best build, like all of you should play it. On my own personal scale, there are pros and cons with some of the builds, because it is pretty menacing for your regards to drive check. That is one thing for sure. It's also menacing that you can do like 5 attacks with like 15k front row with a crit. That is also pretty menacing as well. But it all boils down to how do you actually want to play Drajeweled at the end of the day. So I leave this option to you guys, like whether or how do you want to play it, right? So it's up to you. But then again, this is just how I feel about Drajeweled Magnus. Because I really need to talk about this. This topic, because it's something that a lot of people have been asking me. It's also been lingering from the top of my mind, and of course, like this is like, consider this like a free free advice, or like a consultation on like how do you want to build Magnus or something along those lines, right? But by all means, go ahead. You can actually do whatever you want to feel like building Drajeweled. And so I wish you all the best and good luck building this deck. Alright, so if you don't have Ignis, you can consider getting into buying the Michiru Master deck set. And that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next video. So this has been Professor Enoch 095 signing out. Goodbye.